Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to point something out very quickly. Checking Master Duel meta for, what's the next pack gonna have in it. I just noticed that Sprite finally overtook Tearlaments as the most represented tier 1 deck, and if you have been watching my videos, you know that I called this at the beginning of the format where I said Sprite is the best deck, and I'm glad to see that it's being represented here because you take a look at Sprite. What makes it so good is the fact that you put up a ton of disruptions, right? You've got Red, you've got Carrot, you've got the Melfi package that can put up either the Merry Melfis or the Herald of Arclight. But then you also have just a number of different ways to extend. You've got, your, let's say, Nimble Beaver being Ash Blossom, you special summon Jet. Your Jet gets impermed, you bring out Gigantic. You Gigantic special summon and you continue to combo off. Yes, your end board might be a little bit weaker, but you're still able to cut down your opponent's resources by making them use their hand traps and then still put up a pretty solid board. And you play through a lot of disruption and you put up a lot of disruption. And you have quick OTK options with Gamma Burst. You've got good disruptions with utility cards that can be searched out like the Smashers. This deck can pretty much handle anything in the format. It's not invincible, but just the fact that you can splash so many engines into it. You can see the most common cards used. Bystials are being used in it. This person that just came top 4 in the Hay Cup was opting to play a adventure package in their build instead, still on 40 cards. Like, the deck has so many options and so much utility, and again, it's very resilient and it puts up a lot of disruption. It's why I think it's the best deck of the format. The only thing that this deck loses to really is Maxi, which is in every deck. But if you're able to negate the Maxi, Called By, Cross Out, Ash Blossom, this deck virtually has like no weakness in my opinion, especially when going first. But even going second, like I said, you can play through a number of disruptions, which is why I think it's the most represented deck now and why it's top tier. Before we get into the matches here, if we just quickly take a look at Tearlaments, why did I think Tearlaments has fallen off? Well, it's because of one card really. And that one card is this right here, the Bystial Baldrake. Why is it so impactful? You might think, well, what are you talking about, Quantum? Druis Worm and Magnamut are limited to 1. They're clearly the better cards. They're better overall cards, but against Tearlament, the Baldrake is what really puts in the work. And the fact that this came out at the same time as Magnamut and Druis Worm is very impactful, because in the TCG, obviously we got Darkwing Blast with Druis Worm and Magnamut ahead of Photon Hypernova, which had Baldrake as a common. And by that point, I think Tearlaments was already nerfed out of existence in the meta, in the TCG. The reason why Baldrake is so impactful is because not only do you get the disruption of banishing the Tearlament name from the graveyard to special summon the Baldrake, if somehow Tearlament is able to continue playing and put out a fusion summon, the Baldrake will then tribute another Light or Dark monster and banish that extra deck monster. So you essentially get 2 for 1 off of the Baldrake. Not even 2 for 1, because you still end on a body, right? It's absolutely insane. So the amount of advantage this card gives you against Tearlaments alone, while banishing critical resources from the Tearlament player, like you lose one of your key fusion names from just the Baldrake coming on the field, and then you're going to lose one of your key fusion monsters if you try to bring it out with the Baldrake on the field. So like, it forces Tearlaments to really try to play around Baldrake, and for that reason it's significantly weaker. It's why I've also said Super Poly is literally the best board breaker for Tearlaments. It's an absolute must 3 of, in my opinion. If you take a look at it, I bet you Tearlaments representation, over 80% playing at least 2, over 50% playing 3, and you probably want to play 3 just because you need to get that Baldrake off the field if you have any chance of playing with Tearlament. And so for that reason alone, Tearlament's still very explosive, still can OTK, still can play through a limited number of disruptions, but how impactful those disruptions are is very meaningful. The grind game of Tearlaments has been severely impacted with the Ishizu cards being limited and the Bystials just shutting them down, right? So for those of you that think, oh, they only hit Sullick, it's not even about Sullick going to 1, because the deck only played 2 really. It's just the release of Baldrake just crippled the deck, in my opinion. So not crippled, because obviously it's still performing, but it does provide a very significant interruption. No Floowandereeze in sight, that's okay though. Glad to see Sword Soul getting some representation. I don't like Bystials in Sword Soul, and I was taking a look at some of these lists. Glad to see that there's no Bystials. The Protoss alone is just, I hope we get it in the TCG again. I love this card, but yeah, Sword Soul out here doing work. Good to see these decks still have some life left in them. Branded Tearlament's not doing too well. Branded Despia For all those people who think that this is the best deck, it's definitely not, in my opinion. It's strong and it's fun to play, but it does have its deficiencies. Dragon Link, also a very good deck. I think you have to be very skillful in order to pilot this the right way, but in my opinion, this deck is prone to bricking. But yeah, it's still a fun option to play. When you know your lines and you know how to play this deck against meta, it can be very, very powerful, especially if you go up against like a light or dark deck. Which again, before I wrap it up, the one last thing I'll mention is another reason why Sprite is so strong is because it doesn't really play that hard into Bystials. Like you have Blue, you have Jet, yes, and you have Gigantic as your regularly summoned monsters that would be darks to be banished for Bystials. But you know, most of your other rotational cards, Beaver, Swap Frog, the Melfies, Sprite Red, Sprite Carrot, like they're not dark or lights, so they're not impacted by Bystials nearly as much. And that's one of the reasons why Sprite can play through a lot of the meta as well right now. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Kind of a little bit of what I told you so. So take it with a grain of salt. But let's go ahead and take a look at some matches on Master Duel. So Sprite isn't all powerful. Sometimes you get a hand like this where you've completely bricked and, you know, I'm going first, but there's nothing I can do. So I just end my turn hoping to use my hand traps as disruptions to slow the opponent down, and maybe my Ball Drake can have some utility if the opponent's on something like Branded, Dragon Link, or Tearlaments. Continuing to draw into hand traps, I'm really surprised that the opponent is also just passing their turn. My guess is they're either on an OTK deck or they also bricked very, very hard. So this is very interesting, the back and forth here. You might think like, what the heck is this match? Why are you playing this? This is useless, but you're going to see why playing certain cards are very important. So without a doubt, the opponent is on hand traps, right? Without a doubt. There's no way you have 8 cards and you don't have a hand trap. So we finally draw into a Beaver. Now the opponent knows what we're on. We are going to Ash, and surprisingly enough, the opponent doesn't have a called by. You can see here that the opponent, I kind of was going through it quickly, but they were on Numeron OTK with a Numbers Avail package for Rongo. Because they max seed, I'm able to tactics look at the hand and take out, I think that was the Numeron wall that I put back. It doesn't say, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the Numeron wall, which would have ended the battle phase and allowed them to get the Numeron network, right? I'm pretty sure it can do both. So we put that back, leaving the opponent on still no cards. They've got a Kaiju, Numbers Avail, a Lightning Storm. So yeah, they're going to use the Lightning Storm here, take out the back, or take out the attack position monsters. Interesting. And then just pass turn. So obviously whatever they drew wasn't going to allow them to extend here. So you notice that I didn't go into an extra deck monster when I could have done full extension last turn, and that's because I wanted to play around the Numbers Avail that I saw in their hand. So now I'm like, well, they need Salesman in order to really get the Rongo combo off, but just dealing with Rongo, even if it's detaching materials for 2 or 3 turns, can be very, very difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Gigantic here and attempt to use the effect to search. The opponent ashes it, as expected, because I think I knew that was in their hand, but that allows me to activate the second Talons, and I'm going to look at their hand again, and look at this. They drew Salesman for turn. They couldn't use Numbers Avail because it says if your opponent controls a monster special summon from the extra deck and you do not. So last turn I didn't, because I just kept the Beaver and the Nimble Angler on board to play around the Numbers Avail, and then now I'm going into the Gigantic. So next turn they would have been able to Rongo lock me, and then, you know, Gamma Seal me as well. So doing this, taking away the Numbers Avail, I'm pretty sure there, was super critical. Now I'm just going to go battle phase, beat them down, and see what they're going to do next. So during draw phase, I just max C for a potential turn skip. They Duster away, so that was their draw. Obviously, they got Salesman and Gamma Seal in hand. Nope. I mean, I don't know. I think you probably should put the Gamma Seal on board here, because I'm going to just extend now with the Gigantic here, right? So blue into Jet effect. And yeah, the opponent knows I'm going to go full extension. And then as soon as a Dark is in the graveyard, I'm going to put Ball Drake on field. So that was pretty much GG's. But yeah, I mean, you can see even when we brick, we have enough interruptions in our hand because we play so many hand traps, that Sprite is still like able to extend the match. And, you know, as soon as you get one card, your engine is rolling. And again, that's another very, very powerful aspect of why Sprite is so good. One Nimble Beaver was able to basically go full combo for us, even though we didn't, but we had the potential to go full combo. So yeah, Sprite, again, just super top tier, making the case to be the best deck for the format in Season 19. So in this Sprite matchup, our opening hand is Beaver, Jet, Called by the Grave, Crossout Designator, and Sprite Starter. Nothing to say here. This is an OTK hand. We're going to negate any Maxi or Ash Blossom or even Imperm because of the Crossout Designator. this is a wrap. Like, there's literally, like, you need Super Poly or Dark Ruler no more. Super Poly won't do enough, and by itself you need follow-up engine, whatever engine you're playing. But Dark Ruler and Evenly Match is what you would need to break the board that I'm about to put up. And this is why Dark Ruler is becoming so important in the format, because as I mentioned in the first clip where I went over kind of Master Duel meta, Sprite is literally like nigh untouchable if it goes first and it's able to set up. You literally need Dark Ruler. So yeah, you can see here we're setting up full combo. We've got the Gigantic on the 3200 because it's sprint attached. We went through the full Nimble Angler and Nimble Beaver engine. We've gone through the Sprite engine. We've gone through the Swap Frog engine. Now we're going through the Melfi engine. We've literally got like Spell and Trap Negate, IP Interruption, Elf to bring back when we free up a zone, a Caddy into either Merry Melfis for a monster spin or a Herald of Arclight for an Omni Negate and Tearlaments counter. We've got Call by the Grave and Crossout Designator set. We're not afraid of Duster because of the Carrot. And then of course we've got the Double Cross set as well as a trap card. And then the Call by and Crossout ready for interruption. The opponent is on Pendulum, so this is pretty free. There's not much that they can do to play through this when going second. When going first, yeah, they can put up a lot of negates and it would be a little bit tougher for Sprite to play through. But when I go first, it's like there's nothing you can do. You can just see here anything they tried to do. We didn't even need to use all of our interruptions, right? Like it was just straight up, just total control. So at this point, I'm just going to go through a few motions here just to get some challenges in. You know, special summons, make some Xyzes, get some extra damage for some extra points. Because in the post-duel screen, the more damage you do, the more points you can get for more gems and or legacy tickets. But yeah, that's what you're seeing me do here. Not BMing or anything, just going through the motions. So props to this opponent for staying in the match and not resigning early. So we're just going to do it quick here and go for game, and that is the power of Sprite. I will try to post a marathon of Sprite if I have some time this weekend. So stay tuned for that if you're interested. But if you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Quantum is out.